Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Divorceapalooza. So, when people are getting divorced, I think therapy should be a must. You could be the most emotionally healthy person, and when you go through a divorce, you're not even yourself. You could become a shell of yourself if you don't get the emotional support you need. And I've always been a big believer in therapy in general, but even if you say, "Oh, I don't need a therapist, I'm fine." I would highly recommend just going a couple times because divorce is really, really a tough deal. So today I have one of my favorite, if not my most favorite, awesome, wonderful therapist, Jason Price. He's the founder of Affiliates in Counseling, which is a huge therapy practice on Chicago's North Shore with offices on the North Shore and in the city. And I've known Jason for over 15 years, I think. Hi, Jason.
Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for doing this.
Mm,
I want to tell people watching what I decided to do. So, Jason has been a therapist how many years?
25.
25 years. He's heard so much about from people getting divorced, people thinking about it, people after divorce. So I kind of thought we would have a mini therapy session. And Jason, I would just ask you some questions you hear from people relating to divorce and what you say to them. And that will give somebody an idea of whether they think therapy is for them.
Sure, sure. Go
Okay.
for it.
So the first one I would say is when people say, I wanna get a divorce, but I'm really scared. What do you say to them?
Well, I think that, therapists realize that the process of divorce is traumatic. From the legal aspect of it and having to deal with the dissolution of, finances and figuring out um, parenting and co-parenting with their ex, while you know, losing the hope of what was supposed to be this great union. And so
Right.
there's all sorts of grieving that goes along with it. And so it is a really hard, difficult process. I think as therapists, our job is to show them that we understand it. We've worked with people going through it and that they're going to be better off in the long run because you get to that point in the marriage where once divorce really becomes the only option. I think there's such relief after it goes through, but it takes a long while to get there,
Right, you have to go through this really hard phase to get to a much better place.
for
And
sure.
one thing I love about therapy is that it's really validating. There's a lot of people, I think especially women, but men too, of course. We don't want to burden anybody. So we just kind of don't say how we feel. We don't get it out to anybody and we just kind of sit there with it. And that why is that not good, Jason?
And I'll add to it also that actually we burn out our friends in talking about divorce, and we start to learn, and I've heard this from countless clients that the friends who used to stand by them at the beginning of the divorce drift away, and divorce can take a long time. The more contentious it is, the longer it goes, and the more support we need. And friends don't understand sometimes why it's still happening. And then the other side of it is that I think friends are afraid of, when they start engaging in somebody else's divorce process, it kind of makes them worry about their own marriages. And so
Yeah.
the person tends to feel more and more alone. And that's where I think a therapist can be really helpful. So the person doesn't have to bottle it up. They don't have to deal with it alone. And they get someone who normalizes what the process is supposed to be like.
And you bring up such a great point because if you let it out to a therapist and you've talked it through, maybe you'll talk to your friends a little bit about it, but you'll have already gotten it off your mental plate. So
Mhm.
you can talk about other things. And I always tell people when you're getting divorced, I didn't do this at all. Ask people how they're doing. Like people think when you're getting divorced, that the universe is them, and I was there, and I understand that. But just remember that even your happily married friends have problems too.
And anyone going through a divorce, they need normalcy. And so checking in with their friends and continuing with social activities and hobbies and that stuff is so crucial. But most end up having to approach their divorce like a full-time job. And again, the more contentious it is, the more it feels like there's stuff you have to find out and keep track of. And and your attorney is asking for things from you, all the financial disclosures, and so it becomes so much work that you lose yourself in it. And I think where therapy is effective is helping people maintain who they are through the divorce process.
Completely. All right, next thing, what if somebody says to you, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I'm having some regrets, and now I'm so deep into this divorce and I don't know what to do.
It's normal. I think it's, when you marry somebody, unless they've done something horribly, horribly awful, the divorce process isn't like this 100% certainty, this is what I have to do. You're disentangling from somebody who you once cared deeply for. And so, again, normalizing those feelings becomes really important. I think in therapy, we often spend a lot of time kind of reminding people as to why they are doing it, what wasn't going well. It's very easy to get nostalgic around the holidays or birthdays, anniversary dates, and to focus on, I remember when it was so great, especially when people aren't dating yet or things like that. So they don't have the new relationships to kind of fuel them. And so instead, they hyper focus on what they're missing, and kind of helping them through that grieving process, I think becomes really important. Because
A
that's really
hundred
what it is.
percent. Yes. Okay. And why does the mind always remember all the good things and just forget about the bad? What
Well,
why is that?
so think about it this way. It's the stuff we're craving. And so if I'm hungry and I'm craving a food, I'm going to think about, what I really like to eat and the good stuff that I like. I'm not thinking about the terrible dinner I had. And so when you're craving closeness and intimacy and connection with somebody, you're going to remember the times you felt most connected to somebody. Um,
I always had heard that your mind is protecting you, and so it only remembers the good stuff. Is there any truth
Makes
to that?
sense.
But
Yeah,
I
that makes
never
sense.
heard what you said,
Yeah,
that you're so right. All
yeah.
right, next thing somebody might say is they might come into your office in tears and say, I can't believe my ex already has a girlfriend. Literally, we've been separated for 3 weeks.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we see it a lot more with men than women moving on more quickly. I think the reminder for clients is that everybody copes with things in a different way. And I think men sometimes cope by jumping into that other relationship. It doesn't mean it's true love. It doesn't mean it's better than you. It's their way of deflecting the pain. Where a lot of people look at it and say, I can't even fathom being in another relationship right now. I'm a shell of myself. There's a lot of people who need affirmation that they're still good enough. And so that's why they jump into those relationships. So we try not to compare ourselves. We try and hold on to it's a different way of grieving. Doesn't mean that they're less affected by what happened. They're just maybe a little bit more denial.
I honestly tell people to expect it.
Yeah.
I don't know why everyone's so shocked. I mean, I was too, but
Mm.
people are so shocked, and it really does make sense that people are so lonely and they crave this intimacy. And so they think they might be in love again, or maybe they just admit to themselves that they're just in it for fun. And, it really isn't for whatever reason. But the point is, they don't want to be alone. I think that's the biggest
Right. And,
reason.
and when you're going through that much pain in a divorce process, the honeymoon phase of a new relationship is outstanding. And so,
Yes,
of
it's like a
course, we hold on.
drug.
Yeah, so of
It
course
is.
that. So it's again, it's not necessarily real yet, and so to not get caught up in the how did he move on so fast or how did she move on so fast, to understand that it's just a way of coping for the most people.
Completely agree. Moving on to the next question, or the next thing I bet you hear a lot from people. I feel so guilty that I'm getting divorced. I feel guilty that I'm doing this to my husband. I feel guilty that I'm doing this to my kids.
Sure. Yeah, we hear that a lot. I think the role that we take on, whether it's husband, wife, mother, it becomes so incorporated into our self-esteem and who we are and how we're supposed to function, that it's hard to disentangle from that without feeling some level of guilt or shame. How am I going to be judged by people? All those different factors. How are my kids going to be affected by this? And so there's very real kind of things. I do think that where I go with people around that is the best thing for the people in your life is for you to be the best version of yourself. And something has happened in the marriage where it's taken that away. Um, and so if the divorce is going to help you get back to a better version of yourself, then that's helpful.
I tell people to
Mhm.
write down a list of reasons you're getting divorced
Mhm.
and look at the list and then say, why am I feeling guilty about this, this, and this?
Sure.
Because if you see it on paper or on a computer, don't show it to anybody, but you're going to have a reality check of this is the best choice. I'm
Yeah.
not doing this because it's fun or I got married because I wanted to be divorced.
Right.
This is the best decision in my
Yeah.
mind right now for myself and my kids.
And most people, when they really decide to divorce, it was a painstaking decision to get there. And so the days, months, years spent contemplating it, that wasn't done, haphazardly. It was really thought out for good reason. And so when you finally get to that place, having to go through those reminders again, like you said, of the reasons why you chose that path is really important. Um,
Okay, Jason, I want to ask you this
yeah.
because I know what people are thinking when they're watching. They have these questions, and it's so funny. I have the ability to just know what they're thinking. How long does it take to feel better when you're in therapy? Like, how many times do you have to go?
It really varies. So that's a lame answer, I know. I would say this. I think there's some immediate relief by having a therapist who gets what you're going through because you don't feel alone in that process anymore. And I think that that's huge. And so whether that's 3 or 4 times, I think starts to generate that feeling. I do think that there's a natural grieving process that happens with divorce that I think takes a full year. And I go to that full year because I think there's all the anniversary dates that you have to get through in a year process. All the birthdays, all the Christmases, Thanksgivings, doing that the first time and having a therapist who can kind of aid you through that, I think is really important. Uh,
Yes.
and I think that's
Yes.
about the pacing that's actually
But I
important.
want to tell people, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me, you're saying it takes a full year and people might be thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm gonna be miserable for a year." It's
No,
not all
no,
misery.
no, for
Actually,
sure.
there's a lot of happy, empowering times, found independence,
Yeah.
joy,
Ab-
feeling free, feeling like hopeful for the future. So it's not like you're gonna be miserable for a year.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just that healing is not a linear equation. It doesn't just go, straight up on a chart. It's a roller coaster of a process, and you'll be feeling well, and all of a sudden, for a week, you'll be like, "Why am I so depressed this week?" And then there'll be a reason, whether it's an anniversary date, whether something happened in the divorce process, or your kids. And so there's these ups and downs that go along with it. But overall, I think the improvement continues to go up.
Jason, thank you so much for being on Divorceapalooza.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I want to tell everyone who's watching, if you live in Chicago or the suburbs, the name of Jason's practice is Affiliates in Counseling, and it's affiliatesincounseling.net. Offices in Northbrook and in the city. How many therapists work there, Jason?
About 50.
So now he has 50 therapists. You can find all their bios on the website, affiliatesincounseling.net. I have met at least 10 just through business, but I also went there personally and with my kids over the years. And really, we've always had such a wonderful experience. So thank you
Thanks.
for that. I also want to tell everyone who's watching, you can also find affiliates in counseling in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling and learn a lot more about them there. So that's divorcegirlsmiling.com. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.